Okay guys, so here we are in chapter 2. Okay, we're going to start section 2.1. Chapter 2 is all about modeling distributions of data. You can see from your notes, you guys will have had a copy of this. And 2.1 is describing location in a distribution. So the first thing we're going to talk about is measuring position. And we're going to talk about something that's called the percentile. Now this is something that is interestingly enough, has changed. They've changed their viewpoint on this. It used to be just less than or equal to a number, but starting last year, they changed the definition in what we teach for AP statistics, and they say it's less than or equal to. So that's an important thing to know. You might look this up. You might see some videos on this in places, and you know, right now the way that we do it is less than or equal to, and it's called the percentile. So it tells you how you stack up with everybody else. What percentile are you at? Okay. So we have a stem plot here, and it says the stem plot shows the numbers of wins for each of 30 Major League Baseball teams in 2009. It says find the percentiles for the following teams. So part A, this is my only copy. I gotta get to school. I haven't been to school in a bit. I gotta make copies of this. I don't want to write on my only copy that I have at home. So I'm gonna put my work here. You guys can include it right underneath here. Don't forget, I'm gonna check this stuff. I'm gonna check to see that you're doing this and taking down the notes. Okay? So part A says the Colorado Rockies, who won 92 games. So I gotta find out where that position is, and that's there. So if it's less than or equal to, I can count 92, 91, and count all of those there. It's going to take me a little bit of time. I want to try to save some time if I can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to count what's above it. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 above it. So if there's 5 above it, okay, there's 5 above, and there's 30 total. How many is less than or equal to? Well, that would be 25. Okay, and so what we have to do with that 25 is we want to find the percentile. So we go to our little graphing calculator, okay, and you turn it on, and we're going to do 25 divided by 30, and that's going to give us the percentile. How many are less than or equal to that given number? And that's going to be 83.3. So for part A, the answer is 83.3 percentile. Okay? Percentile. Okay, 83.3. So now the Yankees are at 103. Okay? That's back when the Yankees were good. Okay? Actually, they're good right now too. So 103 is here. Okay, and we find out how many is less than or equal to, well, they're at the 100th percentile. Okay, because everybody is less than or equal to the Yankees. Okay, and then part C, the Kansas City Royals and the Cleveland Indians, both who won 65 games. So I find my 65 here. I have 2 of them. Let's count how many are less than or equal to that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's going to be 5 divided by 30, and when you do 5 divided by 30, you're going to get 16.7%. That's the 16.7 percentile. It makes sense, right? Because if this was 25 out of 30, then these 2 numbers should add to 100. Okay, so we get 16.7 percentile. All right, so turning the page, we have these things that are called cumulative relative frequency graphs. Sometimes you can see them written as what's called an ogive. It's probably a less technical definition, but you might see that if you're looking up this stuff on the internet. So to make a cumulative relative frequency graph, we plot a point corresponding to the cumulative relative frequency in each class at the smallest value of the next class. So this can be a little confusing. I'm going to walk you through this first one. You guys will have this on video, and you're also going to have it in your notes so you can refer to it. So you start with a dot at 0. okay? And then you connect consecutive points with little mini line segments. So here is a distribution. It's a table showing the distribution of median household incomes for the 50 states and the District of Columbia. And what they want to do here is they want to make a cumulative relative frequency graph. So if you look, it says start at 0. So we put a 0, here's 0, okay, here's the vertical axis. Now, our classes go from 35 to 40, from 40 to 45, and when it says 35 to 40, it's really 35 to less than 40. So it's really 35, 36, 37, 38, and 39, okay? It doesn't include 40, doesn't include 45, and that's how you make histograms as well. You can't have a number that's in both groups, okay? So usually they use the less than. So if you look, here's 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 65, 70. So as it says up here, we plot a point corresponding to the cumulative relative frequency in each class, the smallest value of the next class. Well, we have to start at 0, so we put a 0 there, okay? And then what we have to do is we have to figure out where for 35, now I go to 40. Well, I need to plot a dot for the previous class. That's what it says, okay? So if you look, here's 35 to 40, okay? So I plot a 0 at 35. Now for 40, the dot that I do for 40 is going to be the one from here. So it's going to be 1 divided by 51, which is 2%. So here's 0%, here's 20%, 2%. It's going to go up just a little bit, okay? Now the next one is 10, okay? There's 10 in that grouping from 40 to 45. So now I need to be at 11 divided by 51, so at like 21%. So if you look at this dot looks like it's going to be at about 21%, okay? And so the next dot, we go to 0.49, okay? So that's for 45 to less than 50. Here's 50, 0.49, we have a dot there. The next one, the next class, 50 to 55, okay? So that's going to be 73%, 73rd percentile. So for 55, that number's way up at 73%. Our next dot is 82%. So let's see, was that the 73? And then we do 82, and then we do 94, and we finish at 1, okay, or 100%. And that's how you create a cumulative relative frequency graph. And again, it's also called an ogive. Okay, so it talks about it here. It says the point at 50.49 means 49% of the states had median household incomes less than 50%. Okay, goes on, talk a little bit more in your notes there. So, how do we use these things? Well, they'll say here something like this one where they'll say, at what percentile is California with a median income of $57,445? So what you have to do is find the median income here of $57,445, and then you kind of have to go up, okay? You have to go up and then find out what percentile that's going to be. So they try to do it in the graph here. They try to make it easy for you, and they put it here and they put it there. And I don't know, what does that look like? It looks like it's just a little bit over 80. Is that what that looks like? Maybe 0.81. So for part A, we would say that's going to be 0.81, or the 81st percentile. So what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to estimate and well, let's talk about this. We'll talk about both of these, and I'm going to have you guys do this one, okay? And then I'll pull up my solution. Or maybe I'll walk you through it. Maybe that's what I'll do. I'll probably walk you through that one. So, estimate and interpret the first quartile. Well, the beautiful thing about these is I can find the quartiles really easily. Think about it for a minute. Where do I find the first quartile? Where would I find the median? Where would I find the third quartile? Well, the first quartile would be at the 25th percentile. So let's look where 0.25 is, and that looks like they're showing that one here. 0.25, we go over, we go down. The 25th percentile looks like it would be, if I interpret, so it looks like it's going to be about 45,000. Now, it says interpret, so we really have to talk about what this means. So we would say something like about 25% of the states, and I'll write it out, about 25% of the states have a median household income, less than, you could put or equal to there, less than or equal to, we're going to say less than, but if you had or equal to, it would be okay, less than or equal to $45,000. Okay, so important, the context of the problem, so important. Okay, so this is what we have. There you go. Okay, that's your answer to part B. So here it says fantasy football points. So the first question, I'm going to kind of get you started here. It says, how many bins? And what I would tell you is you kind of take the square root of what you have, and that gives you the number of bins you want. So let's count these numbers up. I think there's 36. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 36. Okay, so, you know, normally what you'll do there, like I said, you'll take that number and you'll take the square root of that number, and that's a good guide. It's, you know, it doesn't have to be exact, but somewhere around 6. You don't want to make 4 bins because then you don't really have enough information. Okay, but normally, like I said, a good way to do that is to take the to take your number that you have and take the square root of that number. Okay, so let's look at what our lowest value is and what our highest value is. So our lowest value is 50 and our highest value is 151. Okay, so what do I want to do with that? So if I were to take that and I were to divide, let's say we took our 150, 151, and we go minus 50, and I get what, 101? And then if I were to divide that by 6, so let's do that. Let's take 101, divide by 6, and I'm going to have 16.8 for my intervals. So I would be doing like 50 to, I don't know, what's that? 66.8 or something like that. That's kind of awkward. You'd like to use nice, even, round numbers, you know? So that's why I say it's approximately the square root, okay? Because that told us it was 6, but let's say I used 7. If I used 7 and my intervals were 15, then I did 15 times 7, that would be 105, and that would almost cover what we want to cover, okay? So what I'm going to suggest you do is when you make your bins, okay, you are going to make them like this, okay? And this is how you're going to set it up. This is going to be where you put your bins, and this is where you're going to put your frequency, and then this is where you're going to put your relative frequency, and then at the end, this is where your cumulative relative frequency. Okay, so to get you started, we're going to make this where it's going to be greater than or equal to 50, but less than 65. So the space there is going to be 15, okay? We talked about some of the calculations up here. And so now, if I put 65 here, and I go 15, then this is going to be 80, and so on. So what I want you guys to do is I want you to finish this, okay? And then write your frequencies in, okay? So pause the video, make your bins, fill in your frequencies, and then we're going to talk about how to fill in the other two columns. All right, so hopefully you guys did it this way, and this one's 80 and less than 95, and this is 95, and this is going to be, you know what, rather than just writing this out, I'm just going to use my chart. It's going to save us some time in the video. If you guys are actually doing what you're supposed to be doing by pausing it, then I can reveal it this way, okay? So this is what you should have. 80 to 95, 95 to 110, 110 to 125, 125 to 140, and 140 to 155. So then we have the frequency, and if you went through and you counted these up, you would see that one number fell between 50 and 65, 7 fell between 65 and 80, and so on. Okay, and this would give you your total of 36. So how do we find that relative frequency? Well, let's look. So if this one we had a 1 here, well, I want to know what that relative frequency is. So I do 1 divided by 36, and I get 0.028. Okay, and then for right now, this is also 0.028 because it's my relative, but it's also my cumulative. It also adds up all the ones before it. Well, that's the first one. So for the next one, the next bin, you should have had a 7 there. And then we do 7 divided by 36, and we get 0.194. But then the cumulative means it adds both of these up. Okay, so I'm going to do 8 divided by 36, and I get 0.222. So almost the 25th percentile, almost the first quartile. So the next one, I'm going to do this last one, I want you guys to fill in the rest. So we put an 11 there. So to find the relative frequency, that's just 11. So I do 11 divided by 36, and I get 0.3, I'm going to call it 0.31. And then for this one, it's going to be 7, 18, and 19. So I do 19 divided by 36, and I get 0.528. Okay. All right. So I want you guys to fill in the rest of that chart. Pause the video, fill in the rest of that chart, and we'll go over the answers shortly. Okay, so here is what you should have. Okay, so let's look. 2, frequency 2, relative frequency 0.06, then I get 0.583, 8, 0.22, 0.806, 4, 0.11, 0.916, 3, 0.08, and then that should be where it ends up to be 1, okay? So when I go to make my graph, don't forget, we start at 0, and then we start counting up with these, okay? And we just make little line segments. So at or below 50, there's none that are at or below 50. 50 is my smallest one, okay? It's my smallest value, so that's why we start at 0 there, and we start up at 1 here. And then we just make little line segments. So the next one, right here we have 0.028, so that's, you know, like what, 3%? So you see where 3% is, and then your cumulative relative frequency should look like that. I am not going to ask you how to create one of these on a quiz or a test, but you might be asked to interpret it. You might be asked to answer questions kind of like that. So it is important. It's important to see how it's constructed so that you can answer those types of questions and you get a better understanding of it. But for our purpose, you can say, well, I'm not sure I could do that. Okay, you're not going to have to do it, but you may have to answer a question like this. That's pretty common. Okay, they might say, find the IQR. You could do that. 0.75. 0.25 and find that IQR. They might say find the median, find the 40th percentile. Okay, any of those types of questions are fair game. So that is our first part of this section. Okay, and I want you guys to do the check your understanding on page 89. Okay, and that'll finish